that poor bird. Banging
I
its
know,
head.
right?
That's how you had it.
We've all had days like that.
If you do this though, then it won't see us.
All right, thanks everybody for getting back together. I know it's a little bit harder when you're in person than virtual, but it's good. So we got it within a little bit of time. So next agenda item is the National Skills Coalition and Digital Equity presentation. Not sure if it was taken over for that one. You know, who was doing that? Okay.
Hey Gary, is it off mute?
Nope, I left you as I was on.
You took it off mute?
This is mine.
Can you hear us online?
Yep.
Is anyone
Yes,
on?
we can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, there you go.
Check. Somebody says it's very soft.
Yeah. I just saw that in the chat. For those online, we're just getting some handouts and we're getting prepared for our presentation, so should be up here in a second.
This is like looking good.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Oh, you got one.
Yeah, I got you.
I got you.
Thanks.
Sorry for the delay. We have a Teams WebEx conflict that
No worries.
right, it doesn't have a WebEx link, so. Right. She should be joining Teams shortly. And I think for the presentation, we'll probably have to follow along. In the room, we'll have to follow along on the handout, the summary.
Okay.
Who's giving the presentation?
The woman's name is Amanda Bergson Chyla, and she was one of the co-authors of this report, Closing the Digital Skill Divide. It's really all about skills and as an approach to digital equity. All right, so very
Okay, I see Amanda joining.
She's on. Shows her as muted.
Hi, good morning, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Apologies. I was on the Teams link before, and then someone emailed and needed to be on a WebEx link, but I don't seem to have that. So I'm hoping if I share my slides from this screen, you all will be able to see. Shall I try to do that now?
Yep.
Great. And I want to be respectful of your agenda timing. So my understanding is that we have until 11:45 for this section of the agenda. Is that correct?
That is right, Amanda, but if you need to go a few minutes over, that's okay.
Okay, well, I know you have a lot that you're getting to on this conversation, so I will, try to keep it as tight as possible. Can folks see the slides now? I just wanna make sure that folks can see.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. They're showing at my end, so I'm hoping they'll show up at your end in just a moment.
No, not yet. Doesn't look like the screen is sharing yet.
Okay. I'm wondering if perhaps someone at your end could share the slides. I don't wanna waste your time here. Oops.
We
Since
do
it
have,
doesn't seem,
yeah, we also have the handout in front of us as well.
yeah, the handout is the national data. The slides I have for you include a lot of Minnesota specific information, which is why I wanted to walk you through those. Let's see, I'm getting a note, let's see here. I'm getting a note saying, please join WebEx, but there's still no link to WebEx. So if folks can drop the WebEx link into the chat, I'll just quickly join on WebEx instead, but absent that, I wanna make sure that we can, use your time wisely here. Let me just see here. In a minute, if I can't get the presentation to show up. All right, I will exit, I will come back in, and if that doesnn't work, then we'll go to Bambi here. I'll be right back.
Does anybody have the slides from Amanda?
Allison, do you have the slides from Amanda?
No.
Okay.
Let's see if she's, she may have.
All right, let's do this.
Betty, can you ask her to put them in the chat and then maybe you could share them?
Yeah.
Description not on.
Yeah,
All right, I'll send her an email. So she should,
Wow,
Makes it always
hybrid.
makes it hard.
I've got slides now.
Okay.
So who wants one? Who should I share them with you, Debbie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello folks, I'm back. I will try one more time to share the slides here. If that doesn't work, then I'll just verbally walk you through the material.
Oh, guess what? Here it comes.
There they are.
They're on the
Oh,
line.
fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, apologies for the delay, everyone. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I have a PDF version of these slides that everyone will receive via email, and so as I go fairly quickly through this presentation, you will have the opportunity to refer back to them later. I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk about my organization, National Skills Coalition, what we learned in a recent digital digital skills study and what it means for all of you as leaders in broadband work in Minnesota. National Skills Coalition is a Big Tent bipartisan coalition of workforce and education advocates. We work across the country, including in Minnesota, with partners including workforce boards, community colleges, labor unions, chambers of commerce, really anyone with an interest in workforce development. You all know this, but it bears repeating that the digital divide isn't just about broadband or digital devices, it is very much also about skills. We know from research from John Corrigan that higher digital skills are correlated with higher broadband adoption rates, right? Pretty obvious, right? If you're more confident in navigating with your digital skills, you're more likely to take advantage of things like the Affordable Connectivity Program. We also know that people say over and over again that the reason they're enrolling in digital skills classes is because they want to get a job or get a better job. And so we said, okay, if people are saying that getting a job is such an important reason for learning digital skills, let's understand what kind of digital skills employers are actually looking for. And so we did a research project with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta to look at 43 million help wanted ads that are from calendar year 2021. So unlike other studies of digital skills that really are kind of speculative future projections of what people think might happen in the future, this is a real-time look at what real employers were actually including in their help wanted ads. So it's different from other digital skills studies in that respect. For each skill associated with jobs, we coded it according to whether it was definitely, likely, or not digital. Definitely digital is kind of self-explanatory. It includes things like Microsoft Excel or being comfortable with the Python programming language. Likely digital are things like bookkeeping, where you could do it on paper and pencil using a ledger, but most people these days are using computer software. Our overall finding is that 92% of help wanted ads included a digital or likely digital skill. And that includes 47% that included a definitely digital skill and 45% that included a likely digital skill. Minnesota is very close to the national average in terms of employers looking for digital skills. So Minnesota is in the orange bars here and national data in the gray. And I'm going to share a bunch of data with you in the next few slides, but I just want to talk for a minute about the huge range of things that fall under the umbrella of digital skills. We interviewed one construction company that told us their frontline construction workers have to know 3 to 5 different mobile apps every day on the job so that they can snap pictures on the job site and use the blueprint technology software to submit an RFI to the general contractor on a building job, do work order changes, manage payroll. So these are frontline workers, people who might not have more than a high school education, who might not speak English as their first language, but are still overwhelmingly expected to have digital skills. Cobots are huge. Advanced manufacturing has really expanded the use of collaborative robots. One company that does tire recycling uses cobots to do the heavy, laborious part of the work, and then has one human supervising 3 of the cobots. Telehealth. Non-clinical staff in medical settings have really shifted even more since the pandemic to needing to be able to troubleshoot telehealth for both patients and doctors who are trying to navigate telehealth appointments. And we see in the agriculture sector a huge growth in the use of technology. John Deere tractors and combine harvesters these days come installed with computers, and you need to be able to troubleshoot those out in the field, sometimes with spotty Wi-Fi, to be able to manage the software that controls the amount of fertilizer or the irrigation, or uses GPS technology to map the most efficient way to navigate a field. Food processing. We think of poultry processing as kind of cold, messy work. It is cold, messy work, but increasingly these days it requires digital skills. These workers used to have jobs where they were lifting 40-pound boxes of frozen meat. Now the robot lifts the 42-pound boxes, and their job is to use the HMI, the human-machine interface. And that's the screen you see on the right-hand side of this picture. So this is a 62-year-old worker who's not fluent in English, who did not have a lot of formal education, but is now the go-to person among her colleagues for not just operating the HMI, but troubleshooting the robot when there are challenges in having the robot do its work. And of course, the warehouse and logistics sector, a huge area of digital skills for everything from order picking and inventory control on up. Augmented reality, you might think you're not so familiar with this term, but if you've ever used a Snapchat filter on your phone, or if you've ever used the IKEA app to test out what furniture might look like in your house, you have definitely used augmented reality. Boeing, Airbus, and other aerospace contractors are using this technology to help workers practice using if folks are not talking, they perhaps mute. I think I'm hearing some background noise. To be able to assemble aircraft engines. The bottom line from these findings is that even entry-level positions now require digital skills. This slide shows that folks with 0 to 2 years of experience overwhelmingly still need digital skills. 95% of all jobs require a likely digital skill, and 49% indefinitely digital. Same goes for jobs that require only a high school diploma or jobs that require an associate's degree. So we can't think of digital skills as only something that people need when they get to the level of a white-collar job or a bachelor's degree. People need it at every stage of their working lives. And we often hear this misconception that older workers are the only ones who need access to building digital skills, but overwhelmingly we find in our research that younger workers need digital skills too. They often have fragmented knowledge, meaning that they're comfortable with some digital tasks like sending a text message or making a video, but not comfortable with others like creating a budget spreadsheet or using an electronic medical record. So workers of every age need opportunities to build from the skills they have to the skills they need. The jobs that we looked at, there's a significant difference in terms of pay. So if you're in a job that requires no digital skills and you move to a job that requires even one digital skill, you would see on average a 23% increase in your hourly wage. That is a very significant number that anyone would notice in their paycheck. When we look in particular at Minnesota, the folks were moving, again, from that median hourly wage to the job that requires one digital skill with a higher median hourly wage. There would have economic revenue impacts in terms of state and federal tax revenue. This is based on Minnesota in particular. You can see that greater impact. Small businesses have almost as great a demand for workers with digital skills as larger businesses. You can see that illustrated on the slide here. The major difference is that small businesses really depend on publicly funded workforce systems, community colleges, adult education providers. If you're a big company, you can have an in-house training program and train your workers yourself. If you're a smaller mid-sized business, you're really depending on those publicly funded partners to help create that talent pipeline of workers for you. We see broad demand across industries for digital skills, and you can see the numbers are quite high in a number of sectors that are of interest here in Minnesota. And we know that folks need both foundational and industry-specific skills. So let me talk a little bit about what those actually are. When we talk about Minnesota employers in particular, they are looking for workers who have a strong base of foundational digital skills. These are very basic things, right? Typing, data entry, this catch-all category of computer literacy, and they use office software. But overwhelmingly, employers also need people to have industry-specific skills. And so I've pulled out a few industry-specific skills that have really high demand in Minnesota as illustration. So for example, again, perhaps not surprising, finance and insurance sector, expertise with mobile banking software, healthcare, electronic medical records, radiologic technology, in manufacturing, ERP or enterprise resource planning software, robotics, AutoCAD, retail, SAS retail analytics and consumer goods software, huge demand for that, and the real estate, rental and leasing sector, Yardi, property management software. So there's a lot of demand for industry-specific skills. This slide has kind of small print. The real take-home message here is there's some occupations where there's particularly strong demand for digital skills, and this slide helps illustrate as well that if anything, our study's findings are conservative, right? Because there are some job ads where the employer either doesn't list or doesn't clearly list skills that are required, as you can see by the fact that somehow only 95% of software developer and engineer jobs indicate that they need digital skills. So what that means is there's 5% of those job ads where there's a goof in the listing, right? And they clearly require digital skills but don't list it. And our qualitative interviews have given us some examples of how that happens. But if anything, the data that we've analyzed is probably conservative. So I've just thrown a whole lot of statistics at you, and my hope is that as you leave today's conversation, you'll walk away with a couple of concrete things you can actually do with this information. The first is really around the investment of the Digital Equity Act in BEAD funding, making sure that a portion of that funding really is dedicated to both basic and more advanced digital skills. The second is combining the findings in our study with census data to help target and close equity gaps for the covered populations under the Digital Equity Act. In our study, we did 2 sample state profiles, one for Illinois, one for North Carolina, showing how you could use publicly available census data to do that. We also encourage broadband leaders to make sure they're collaborating with labor and education officials to amplify each other's investments in digital skills, making sure that digital skills are embedded throughout other state workforce development investments, and investing in partnerships that bring together groups of employers with education and training providers to create upskilling programs. Thanks for your patience with the tech difficulties today. We have a few minutes for questions here. So we have about 5 minutes. We can either have folks unmute or drop questions into the chat. I'll defer to how you prefer to manage the Q&A.
Thank you, Amanda. That was some really good information. So questions
And
for Amanda?
the room is muted at this point. So if anyone is talking in the room, I'm not able to hear them.
Okay. Can you hear us now, Amanda? No, still nothing?
I've also included my contact information at the end of these slides. So if anyone has any questions following today's meeting, you'll be able to get in touch with me.
I'm having copies of the slides made.
Amanda, are you able to hear us?
Did someone mute all participants?
Looks like folks may not, oh, there we go.
That was, yeah.
Any questions at this end?
Can you hear us now?
I can see Teddy's lips moving, so I think he might be asking something, but I can't hear him. So, if folks have questions and want to type them into the chat, I'm happy to address them there. And I will be staying on for the next 15 minutes or so as your next presenter gets going. So if folks have additional questions that they want to type into the chat, I will be around for the next 15 minutes or so to answer those questions as well. Oh yes, let me stop sharing the slides here. That might make it easier for folks. Okay.
Still can't hear us, Amanda?
Okay, and again, everyone will get a PDF of these slides following today's meeting, so you'll be able to refer back to them at your leisure to see the recommendations that we have and the other next steps.
I see that.
Seeing some notes that folks are working on the sound here.
So So in Teams, the room is muted. I don't know. You can use the master now.
In the meantime, I'll just reiterate the recommendations per Yvonne's request in the chat. The first recommendation is around making sure that a portion of the BEAD and DEA funds are devoted to digital skills in particular. So, devote a portion of BEAD and DE funding to skills. The second is to make sure that the findings from our study can be combined with census data to really help identify how you can close equity gaps for covered populations under the Digital Equity Act. And again, we've done Illinois and North Carolina examples in the appendix to our report, which is online. I've also included a link to that in the PDF of the slides that you'll be getting. Our third recommendation is for broadband officials to collaborate with state labor and education officials. And I can talk more about that if folks want to have questions about sort of how to do that. Our fourth recommendation is around making sure that digital skills are explicitly allowed in other state workforce development investments, things like incumbent worker training funds and that sort of thing. And then our fifth and final recommendation is to invest in industry sector partnerships. I see that Ronald says that he's going to be posting some questions for me in the chat. I will wait for those to come through.
Does anyone have any questions for Amanda, and I can post them? Someone muted the entire room.
And I do know that we're at the end of my section of your agenda, and I know you have other things to get to, so if you need to move on, that's, of course I understand that. And as I said, I'll be here for the next 15 minutes in the chat in case folks have written questions they want to share. Thanks so much.
She's a treat. Oh God, talk about professional.
Rejoin it and try to reset that setting up. Or how they muted it.
Teddy, you want us to rejoin it?
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Because I think we have the task force members to hear us in a little bit. Oh, did somebody mute us? Did there went out? That's fine.
Probably. But I only muted, that only mutes this room, it doesn't mute.
Now, when there's somebody,
Yeah.
participants.
Yeah, maybe they shouldn't have been able to do that, but.
No, you can do that.
Can you?
You can actually make an individual and you won't, that individual can
Enter your VTC conference ID, followed by pound.
I can't, because I'm on the web version. Because I looked to see if I could unmute.
I can't, it's the strangest thing.
I did. I assumed I'd be curious. That's something. Because I think they're right. It's probably underreported.
Enter your VTC conference. Thank you for joining. We'll let the people in the meeting know that you're here.
Amanda, are you able to hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, there we go.
All right. So does anybody in the room have a question for Amanda? about online, anybody have any questions for Amanda? And Amanda, I think you'll be sharing this presentation with us, right? Because I thought there was really a lot of good information.
Yes, there's a PDF version of the slides that I have shared with your Comcast host for this morning, and they will be sharing that out with everyone. It can also be posted publicly on your broadband minutes for this meeting on the website, so that folks can access it there too as well.
I did have one question. When you look at those job postings, was there anything in there about whoever was posting the job of reskilling the applicants, or you'll be taught additional things or anything like that in that?
Yeah, so not in this study, but in our previous study, we did look at how companies are tackling the issue of helping existing workers, that is incumbent workers, to build skills on the job. And the answer is there's huge variation. Some companies are very deliberate and intentional about making those investments in workers. And not surprisingly, those are companies that have kind of already had a good track record of helping workers identify a career path. So for example, L'Oreal Cosmetics, Nationwide Insurance, and there are also companies that are big enough to have an internal career path so that you can say, okay, if I build this skill, this is the new job I can qualify for. There are other companies where, frankly, they don't realize that they need to upskill their existing workers until after it starts costing them money. So for example, we interviewed one company that is 2 years into trying to transition from paper paychecks to electronic direct deposit. And the reason it's taking them so long is because their C-suite executives didn't realize that their 120,000 frontline employees didn't necessarily have the literacy skills or the experience to be comfortable logging in with two-factor authentication, creating complex passwords, et cetera, and until they can log into the payroll system, they can't, switch everybody over. Another example we heard was from a trucking company where they said, oh, all our drivers have smartphones. And so they just switched in the middle of the pandemic over to a new system where the truckers had to log not just their hours for payroll purposes, but some of their federally required information about the loads they were carrying and so forth into this mobile app. And then their supervisors were spending hundreds of hours on the phone troubleshooting with their drivers in the field, because it turns out that just because you can use your smartphone to send a text message or watch a YouTube video doesn't actually mean that they're comfortable with a particular kind of industry software that you might need to use to do your job. So there's a huge amount of variation in terms of how prepared employers are to provide that upskilling, and whether they're reaching out to their partners in workforce boards or adult education providers or job training programs to help them do that upskilling. I see a question in the chat about whether there's any data in this study about the percentage of jobs that require telework. The short answer is no, and partly that's because the data are so messy. Sometimes companies will put that the job is remote, but then they'll put the headquarters of their company as the quote location of the job, and the kind of software that gathers all these 43 million help wanted ads can't distinguish between whether a company is just listing where their headquarters is located versus whether they're listing where the work has to take place. So the data is such a mess that we couldn't discern anything reliable out of that information.
Thank you. Okay, any last questions for Amanda?
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate your time and great presentation. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to do now is, obviously being this last meeting, at least for this task force, was to just kind of go around the room and online and kind of just get from task force members thoughts about the time you spent on the task force, things that you thought went well, things that we could be done differently or whatnot. And like I said, we take notes of the both actually, and be able to share with the next task force that's going to be joined. So with that, instead of starting in the room, which we that, how about we start online? And Brian, I don't know if you're on, but I'm just kind of going down the list of what I have on there. Would love to start with you.
All right, Teddy, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your leadership through the process. I think sometimes it may have been a little bit like herding cats, but you did a nice job. So thank you. And also, I just want to thank the staff. You know, we had Angie and then and Bree and Diane, I think, and Carol providing all the support. I think that's been, I would say probably one of the things that was most productive. One of our earlier meetings where we had a pretty simplistic goal of really focused on and we broke into 3 different cities, and I thought that was extremely productive and really worked through that really well. And maybe part of that is because we did have some meetings that were able to do that directly in person. But overall, again, I think the committee structure was very good. I think it did some good. I am a little disappointed that we were able to get all the funding that we needed, so we could get the projects approved. But I think again, committee structure is good, and I think just having a focus of a couple of goals is acceptable.
Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate that and appreciate the kind words as well. Dave Wolf, if you're able to hear us.
Hey Teddy, unfortunately I'm driving on some icy roads in North Dakota right now, so I can't talk much, but want to thank you for your leadership, want to thank OPD for all the hard work they're doing, I want to thank all my co-board members for all their hard work and relationship building as well. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Teddy.
Yeah, well thanks Dave, and be careful. That's more important. Jason Holiday, I see you're on.
Yeah, good morning. I think really enjoyed my time being on the task force. I just want to thank the state for the opportunity, for being a part of this. I learned a lot. I really like the subcommittees that we formed. We developed the annual reports every year. I thought that was a good process and a great learning experience. I want to thank everyone, and good luck moving everything in the future.
Thank you, Jason. Micah?
We would like to thank you, Kate, for the leadership on this group, as I said before. One of the things I have for this group going forward is looking for advocacy group, the launch of the Planning Foundation, I think, provided some challenges for us. He was a very instrumental member of the group, but looking going forward, finding that group, if it exists to support, provide that additional support. Looking at keeping the push on and pressure on to the legislative to look at funding, not go like heavily federal.
Thank you, Micah. Okay, Yvonne?
Hi everyone, sorry for no video today. I have COVID, so I am not camera ready. Many thanks to the staff and to Teddy, Daily Task Force members. I have to give a shout out to Scott Cole, amazing resource to help us with the preparation of the report each year. Knowing the level of priorities out there, I think continue to educate our stories that highlight needs and personal stories coupled with statistics, to me is something to keep thinking about, making sure that we're getting the personal stories captured video and, case versus base rate, right? Folks respond and there's emotional ties and those folks that they can relate to. I think the Broadband Task Force diversity itself continues to be improved, making sure that we have task force members from all the different groups that we're presenting. And then beyond the onboarding process, I found it a little bit difficult and would like to recommend that you think a little bit about the onboarding of the new folks and making sure that there's terminology and process, kind of a orientation maybe, a full orientation meeting maybe with a couple of the OBD office members probably would help there. It's been a privilege to serve. I welcome any opportunity to assist or collaborate with any of you in the future.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. And hopefully you feel better. It's never easy to go through. Okay, I think, the other person that was online was Jim Whiteman, but he had to drop off, so, reading his comments. Yeah, so, good. All right, let's start with, folks in the room, and I'll start to my right, Steve.
Well, certainly want to thank the Office of Broadband staff. Provided us with a lot of great information and data that we need as a task force. Thanks, Teddy. I think it was unfortunate that we couldn't meet in person. I think our first couple of meetings, you start to form those relationships, and it's just a lot easier to do things in person necessarily remotely, having more significant dialogue than it seems like it is. But I just think the next task force needs to know that there's still a ton of work to be done in this state. We praise the Office of Broadband, we give it all the accolades we deserve, but I think they all even admit there's a lot of work to be done yet. I know I've probably reminded everybody a little bit too much about rural Minnesota challenges, but they're real and they need to be addressed. Yeah, so, it's been a pleasure. And I know there's a couple of good applicants from northeastern Minnesota, so I'll be filling in for me.
Thank you, Steve. Mark?
Yeah, thank you. And echoing that, thanks to Teddy for his leadership and to the Office of Broadband Development and all the staff there and to all my colleagues on the task force. It's been educational, eye-opening, frustrating, right? At times it's been mentioned about the funding, and trying to make sure that that's always where it needs to be, but it can be frustrating work, right? And I'm with Steve on the rural, the rural part of it, because, I often talked about, some of these rural areas that were bullseyes for poor internet service. I didn't use the word that I usually use, but, I was gonna sum this up in 3 words, and that says, don't give up, right? There is still work to be done. The new task force, I would say to them, don't, keep up the work, because they're still underserved, they're still unserved, and we have to focus on them. And make sure that we take care of all of those folks, before we go. I did appreciate that we're branching out into the digital equity and affordability piece, because I think that's huge. And that's the next logical, step. But we still have to realize that there's still work to be done in getting people access to it. So it's still we're still firing with 2 cannons there, so. So again, thank you for the experience, thank you everybody. Yeah, don't give up. Phil?
As a new guy in town, I feel like I'm just getting started, and I thought healthcare was complicated, and then I came to this, and talk about information overload. It's been absolutely eye-opening from my standpoint, and I appreciate being able to kind of share it in my expertise, and will echo some of the comments, and appreciate Teddy's expertise and leadership, as well as the state and department. It's all been very helpful. I appreciate the clear direction that this group is headed, and I think it can be further expanded, which I appreciate, and I think that's a huge opportunity. And I think I do feel like the work is just starting, not even close to being done. I also appreciate kind of the board kind of keep it simple and try not to make it too complicated. And I think for the general public, and especially, you know, greater Minnesota, just making sure we're reaching out to those folks to try to help them understand what's all being done. So I appreciate everybody's patience, and look forward to seeing what this group does next.
Thank you, Phil. Barbara?
I'm newer than you.
That's true.
Barbara Deere Klein, and I want to say as well that Dee has always been very accessible and very helpful all along, and it's helpful with me coming on as a late member. I just want to say again that broadband is economic development in the rural area. We cannot, it is our entire economic development program in Leesburg County is broadband, and that's just so important. I really miss that there wasn't a broadband day on the Hill this year. Wasn't under this task force, but the fact that Landon has fallen off and the Rural Broadband Coalition has fallen off, what a gap in a year like this to not have had a day on the Hill. I'd like to see the task force in the future be more engaged legislatively, tell these stories there, because this is a really important driving force of the report itself is not enough. We really need to get more engaged and more connected out there. And I really feel that there's a rural divide. I don't think it's red versus blue. I think there's a lot of different reasons for it, but people are really feeling that with the big cut from the governor's budget, and that's really unfortunate. So I appreciate being here. It's been fun getting to know everybody.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah.
Teresa?
Thanks to Comcast for hosting our last meeting, and for lunch, whoever's getting the lunch for us. It's on the way. Really enjoyed meeting all of you. I like that it was a diverse group. I like that we hired Scott Cole. He did a very good job with the last two reports, making them more readable, if you will, instead of just long and winded. Thanks to Teddy. He didn't bring clutter for us, but he did the one time, so that was much appreciated. And yeah, it was too bad that we didn't get to meet face to face more often, but we did the best we could with COVID and kind of threw a wrench into everything, but it made the need more apparent to everyone. So carry on. Good luck to the new members, and thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. So I think that's everyone. Did I miss anybody else that's on the task force? Anybody in line? I didn't think so. I know we have a couple missing, a couple have to drop off, but from my end, I want to thank each and every one of you. I think I know it is frustrating work, and a lot of times you feel like you're spinning your wheels and it doesn't go anywhere. But I will say this, I mean, I was reminded by the previous task force chairs that actually in our tenure, the 3.5 years we were on, we've actually, there's more money that has gone to broadband from both the state and federal, and even if you leave the federal aside, even on the state level, it's more happened in the last 3.5 years than has been. So there is progress, it's just not at the speed that we'd like to see it. And I know we've done a lot of analysis around the numbers and what it takes to really close the gap. And some of the funding doesn't quite reflect that. To close that, even the $276 million that was recently proposed was getting us closer to that. And as we heard today, it doesn't quite seem to be there. But that said, I think it's progress. So we'll have to be thankful of that. And I think the work on the digital equity is great. And under equity, I also put the adoption aspect of it, right? So how do we get people to get adoption? Yes, accessibility is first and foremost, because you have to have that available. And then after that, I think you get into, okay, how does affordability look like, et cetera. So lots of work still left for the next task force to come. But I think this task force has done a nice job sort of setting the base for that. I do agree that having the writer has been super helpful, getting that message out. I know the letters we put together, some of the fire drills, we've gone through that. That hasn't gone unnoticed, so that's also helped. So the work of this task force, I really have appreciated what we've done together. But one of the recommendations for me for the next task force is to not maybe all in-person meetings, but to do a good mix, at least 50-50. If not, maybe even a 60-40, 70-30, where it's more in person. I do agree that having the interaction building, kind of getting to know each other a bit more, getting into those small groups and subcommittees and being able to really discuss it is a lot more effective than when you're online. But I do know that online is also helpful from the travel perspective and timing and things of that nature and being able to meet. So a combo is probably the right place, and that would be my recommendation for the next task force. So, but I've really appreciated and getting to know each and every one of you. Like it's been fun. We do have folks that come from a variety of different places, and I will say it wasn't through about halfway in doing this that I realized, we don't even need to have too many outside speakers because we got the expertise like here in the committee or in the task force. So if we can leverage that, we can learn quite a bit. And I think a lot of our recommendations actually have come from people that have sort of talked about either their county or talked about the work that they do or the industry they're in. And I think that's been extremely helpful. So I appreciate all the kind words. I mean, sometimes it feels like, again, have we really made progress? And when you sit back and you talk to other previous members, yes, there has been quite a bit of progress. So Office of Broadband Development can't say enough. As Tom said earlier, it is one that's modeled and replicated. But again, we'll continue to push, right? There's still a lot more to do, but I think that provides us at least the base to do all the great things that we want to do. And finally, Comcast for hosting us today. I really do appreciate that and having us here. The technical challenges, trust me, that's normal. That's part of the course. I'm just happy that I'm not the chief technology officer here, because usually it's like, what are you doing about this? You know? And I'm like, this is as good as it gets because it's challenging through these times, and it's not so simple between different platforms and all that. But that is the challenge of digital going forward. So, and hopefully you've appreciated some of the presentations. So with that, again, a big thank you to everyone, and we will. Hopefully some of you will stay on, and I don't know if I'm going to stay on or not. I have to decide that. I guess after Monday we decide that. Reminder from Diane, April 3rd is the last day to put the application in. So with that, I'm going to open up to any other comments or anything else anybody else wants to say. Steve?
Well, I just hope perhaps, since we're at a crossroads in the legislature, with a significant reduction in funding, that the task force perhaps can issue one last letter to Committee Chair Vang and Putnam in Ag in both House and Senate, and the legislative leadership about how important it is. There's this misconception that this federal funding is coming tomorrow. They just don't understand this, and so I think we need to emphasize the importance of the state providing funding, and we should be making a recommendation on low density. That funding is so critical. It's so evident. So I certainly would entertain a motion to submit one last letter and making a recommendation. How critical it is.
I'm okay with that. How do other task force members feel about that?
I agree.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. Given what they had, initially, and then the reduction kind of in that, I think making note of that would be.
And the update about how far off that federal funding is. We cannot lose a construction season. Cannot lose a construction season.
Actually, two.
Two, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think our commission goes all the way to sometime in April, so we have time to summon one more. So.
Cool.
I will just say, if I want to take a minute, because I'm just getting blown up on getting meetings this week, so I would recommend.
Yeah, it's gotta be quick.
Sooner than later.
Yeah, and again, it's just, I'm certainly we weren't in those closed doors meetings, but I'm surprised at such a significant cut.
Yeah.
Again, it just doesn't, they're just not grasping the critical need. And there was an opportunity there, was a great proposal by the governor to keep the state moving in the right direction until the BEAD funding comes along. And so now, and again, I was a little bit confused with the new language that's being bantered about, because I was included on an email from sell, and she wants to keep the low density program, get rid of the word pilot, keep it in there, but we need to perhaps make a recommendation on the split to keep that program going. And then, you know, does the Office of Broadband run a parallel grant instead of one after another like they did this time? And again, it was a pilot program, so it was different, but if we eliminate the word pilot, it becomes, you know, there's X million for the regular grants and X million for the low density, we just run them at the same time, so you get a full construction season.
I think a letter's really important too, because we don't have the Rural Broadband Coalition, we didn't have a day on the Hill. It's been, I was the one that called MinPost and said, could you please do an article about broadband? No one's saying anything here. There's just been, so I think it's really important to have a letter that says, you know, we expected more, we hope for more.
Yeah, no, I agree on a letter. The timing is gonna be interesting. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember last year, the timing is kind of interesting, right? Like, it's sometimes sooner is better, sometimes later. So, but we'll put one together. Any other public comments from even others that are not on the task force?
Public comment? The
No.
bird's not after you, I shut the blinds.
Okay. And I'm not seeing anything online, any comments online? Got an agreement on the letter. All right, if there's nothing else, I will call this meeting adjourned, and again, big thank you to
Thank you.
everyone. And just look out in your email for a letter coming, and just quick reply would be appreciated. And a quick reply just to me.
Yeah.
Just to you.
Yeah, because it can't be to everybody, then it becomes a meeting itself, so.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.